Toy Story has some of Pixar's most interesting villains, but do you actually remember all of them? Lotso, the main villain of Toy Story 3, is a masterclass in how to create a complex and detestable character. Even though he looks like a cute teddy bear, Lotso ruled Sunnyside Daycare with coldness and cruelty, forcing Woody's gang to stay in the room with the younger kids, who mistreat the toys, while he and his friends had the privilege of staying in the room with the older kids, who take good care of the toys. If things had stopped there, it would still be mild compared to the other atrocities Lotso committed in this movie. He did things like erase Buzz Lightyear's memories, imprison all of Woody's friends, break countless innocent toys, and in the end, he even tried to incinerate Woody and all of his friends. Lotso became so evil because of something that happened in his past. He was the toy of a little girl, until he was accidentally left behind somewhere with his friends. Lotso and the others traveled for a long time trying to get back home, but when they finally arrived, the bear discovered he had been replaced by another plush of the exact same model. That turned him into someone who believes every toy's fate is to be abandoned and lose its value. The irony is that, in the end, Lotso lost control of the daycare and ended up strapped to a garbage truck, truly becoming the disposable trash he believes every toy is destined to become. We're just getting started because we're going to explain every Toy Story villain in just a few minutes. The moment has come! Let's enjoy another Cinewave together! Sid. Because of Sid, Andy's troubled neighbor, the first Toy Story almost turned into a horror movie. That's because he did truly disturbing things and was responsible for traumatizing many kids. Sid was just a somewhat aggressive and extreme kid, but the real problem is that he abused his toys and used them in all kinds of experiments. That wouldn't be so bad in the real world, where toys aren't alive, but it's terrible in the Toy Story universe, where they all are living beings. Sid would rip pieces off toys and combine them with parts from others to create entirely new toys that look like terrifying mutants. On top of that, he did other not-so-nice things too, like strapping Buzz Lightyear to a firework rocket to make him fly and explode in the sky. Technically, Sid is just a chaotic kid who likes making a mess, and who has a lot of creativity for it, if we may say so. He isn't really that evil, since he has no idea the toys are alive. That is, he didn't know because Woody and the other toys revealed themselves to him at the end of the movie in order to scare him, and you can be sure it worked very well. Sid was completely traumatized by what he saw and never messed with toys again after that. We don't know whether he kept believing toys are alive or assumed it was some kind of hallucination, but we did get the pleasure of seeing him again in Toy Story 3, where Sid shows up as a garbage man and seems quite happy with his life. Gabby Gabby. Toy Story 4 introduced a very different kind of villain, Gabby Gabby. Many people feel she can barely be considered a villain at all, but rather an antagonist, someone who causes problems for the main characters but isn't necessarily a bad person. The reason is that Gabby Gabby doesn't actually want to cause harm, she just wants to be chosen by a child. She's a vintage doll from the 1950s who lived in an antique shop because she had never been picked by a child. Gabby believed the reason for that was her defective voice box. When she saw that Woody had a fully functional voice box, she decided she would get it at any cost, which resulted in her chasing Woody and kidnapping Forky to use him as a hostage. She didn't want to hurt anyone, she just wanted to end her own suffering of not having a child. Unlike most villains, Gabby Gabby actually achieved her goal. She obtained Woody's voice box. However, that still wasn't enough because the little girl Gabby wanted to choose her didn't take her even with the voice box. That left the doll heartbroken and made her realize that having a voice box wouldn't be enough. But in the end, Gabby Gabby, with Woody's help, managed to find a little girl who chose her of her own free will, and that was beautiful to see because her suffering finally came to an end. Lilypad. Lilypad is the main villain of the newest installment in the franchise, Toy Story 5, and everything we know about her suggests she's going to cause major problems for Bonnie's toys. While all the previous films focused on toys up to now, Lilypad is something different. She's a kid's tablet designed for all kinds of uses, not just playing, but also searching things, teaching other languages, accessing social media, and basically anything we can imagine. Because of that, Bonnie will stop playing with her toys and interacting with other children, which will be a huge problem. Lilypad is so interesting because she represents one of the major issues of modern society. Kids nowadays hardly play with toys anymore and prefer to entertain themselves with tablets and phones, which is kind of sad in a way, and we have no idea what will happen. Will the toys actually be able to defeat her? After all, Lilypad isn't just a villain, but the symptom of technological evolution. In fact, one of the posters for this film shows something creepy. Lilypad is shown recording Woody and Buzz Lightyear, which is pretty unsettling. So tell us, who is your favorite Toy Story villain? And for you who made it this far, we have a special special invitation. Click the join button down below and become part of our exclusive group of subscribers. We have 3 plans for you to choose from. You can become a Wave Fund member and use our badges on your profile and special emojis in the channel's video comments. Or you can become a Wave Plus member and get early access to our videos and priority replies in the comments. But if you want access to our exclusive members-only videos and polls, you can become a Wave Max member. Starting at $2.99, you can become the newest member of Cinewave. Click now and get even closer to us. Al. Sid may have been a cruel human, but at least he was just a child. Unlike Al McWiggin, one of the villains of Toy Story 2, he is the greedy manager of a toy store, and when we say greedy, we're not exaggerating. As soon as he realized Woody was a rare collector's toy, he simply stole him. We're not talking about finding Woody on the street and picking him up thinking he had no owner, but deliberately stealing him from a child without the slightest hesitation. Al represents the worst side of adult toy collectors. When you stop seeing toys with childhood affection and start seeing them only as products and sources of money. Al hid Woody along with his other collectible toys like Stinky Pete, Jessie, and Bullseye, and his plan was to take them to Japan to sell them to a Japanese museum in exchange for a lot of money. If Al had succeeded in carrying out his plans, Woody and Jessie would have been trapped forever in a museum, and the cowboy would never have been able to reunite with Andy. But thankfully that didn't happen because the toys managed to escape and avoid that cruel fate. Stinky Pete. The true villain of Toy Story 2 is Stinky Pete, a collector's doll who spent decades trapped inside a box until he became one of the toys that were going to be taken to Japan by Al McWiggin. And surprisingly enough, Pete actually wanted that to happen. Having spent all those years isolated, Pete grew to dislike children. He liked remaining untouched, which led him to believe that being preserved forever in a museum is better than being played with and eventually abandoned by one of them. At first, Pete presented himself as a nice guy, only to later reveal his dark side when he prevents Woody, Jessie, and Bullseye from escaping. Pete wants to force them to be taken with him to the museum in Japan, as if that were the best possible outcome. In the end, Pete fails to achieve his goal of being taken to the museum, being found by a child and taken by her, which makes him realize he won't remain preserved for much longer. That is the worst thing that could have happened to Pete. Zurg. This is a funny case because the Zurg toy is clearly a reference to Darth Vader, the villain of Star Wars and one of the greatest villains in all of pop culture. Within the Buzz Lightyear franchise, which exists inside the Toy Story universe, Zurg is Buzz's arch-enemy. But we're not talking about that franchise character, but rather the Zurg toy who shows up in Toy Story 2. In this film, Zurg was just another toy from Al McWiggin's store who was accidentally freed from his box. Just like Buzz Lightyear in the first movie, Zurg believed he was a real person, and that his story as Buzz's arch-enemy was real, which led him to become a threat. But Zurg wasn't actually evil, he only thought he was. Eventually, Zurg turned good and even began acting like the father of another Buzz Lightyear, Bensons. Another case where a toy is a villain, despite not being exactly evil, is the Bensons from Toy Story 4. They are a group of very creepy ventriloquist dummies who serve Gabby Gabby, the main antagonist. Seriously, these toys are by far one of the scariest things in Toy Story 4. Unlike most toys, the Bensons don't speak and don't even seem to have free will, simply serving their mistress, which only makes them more unsettling. In fact, these characters were based on a discarded idea for the first Toy Story film, in which Woody would have been a ventriloquist dummy. You know what would be awesome? Subscribing right now and getting all our videos straight on YouTube. Ken. You definitely know Ken, Barbie's boyfriend. He appears in Toy Story 3, but as a villain. Ken is a toy who worked for Lotso, serving as one of his henchmen until Barbie manages to make him realize that Lotso was a dictator. Even though he did terrible things while he was being controlled by Lotso, Ken believed what he was doing was right and only began to understand how wrong he had been because of Barbie. In the end, Ken betrays Lotso and helps Woody's gang escape, but he remains at Sunnyside with Barbie. But the coolest part is that he doesn't just stay there doing nothing. Ken becomes the leader of the daycare alongside Barbie, and the two of them work together to revolutionize Sunnyside and transform the place into a true utopia, which only proves how incredible Ken's redemption was. Big Baby. Big Baby is another Toy Story 3 villain who worked for Lotso. In fact, he was the bear's right hand and was involved in practically all the wrongdoing committed during his terrible rule. But the story between the two goes much further back. Big Baby had been Lotso's friend long before the daycare, since the two were toys belonging to the same child, and he was also left behind by the girl along with Lotso. When they returned home, the bear saw that he had been replaced, but there was no replacement for Big Baby. Even so, Lotso lied, saying that the girl had also replaced Big Baby, just because he didn't want to be alone. In other words, Big Baby was completely manipulated by Lotso and led to become a villain. But after discovering he had been deceived by the bear, he finally rebelled and helped Woody's gang defeat his former friend. We've prepared 2 videos you're going to love. Pick one and keep having fun here with Teen Videos.